Two people can reach the same age with muscles that behave very differently. One struggles to rise from a chair, loses balance easily, and becomes exhausted after climbing a few stairs. The other continues cycling, running, swimming, or lifting weights well into later life. Their difference is not only visible in strength or endurance, it can be detected inside their muscle cells. A study published in Nature, Aging in July 2026 examined skeletal muscle using transcriptomics, metabolomics, and lipidomics. Researchers compared younger adults with older people who had different levels of physical function and long-term training. They found that physically trained older adults had roughly half as many age-related molecular differences as less fit older participants. In several important pathways, their muscles looked surprisingly similar to those of younger adults. This does not mean exercise completely stops muscle aging. Some molecular changes appeared regardless of fitness, but the study suggests that a large portion of what we call normal muscular aging may not be unavoidable. Some of it may reflect years of insufficient physical activity. Skeletal muscle is one of the largest organs in the body. It allows movement, stabilizes joints, stores glucose, consumes energy, and releases signaling molecules that communicate with the brain, liver, fat tissue, immune system, and cardiovascular system. When muscle declines, the consequences spread far beyond weaker arms and legs. Older adults with poor muscle function face greater risks of falls, fractures, insulin resistance, loss of independence, hospitalization, and early death. Muscle strength is therefore not simply a measure of athletic performance. It is one of the strongest practical indicators of health during aging. Muscle mass generally begins declining gradually in adulthood. The process can accelerate later in life, especially when physical activity falls. Individual muscle fibers shrink, motor neurons are lost, connective tissue accumulates, and the remaining muscle becomes less capable of producing force. Mitochondria also change. These structures act as cellular power plants, converting nutrients into usable energy. Aging muscles often show reduced mitochondrial capacity and weaker expression of genes involved in cellular respiration. This can make movement feel more difficult, which encourages inactivity and creates a harmful cycle. A person moves less because movement feels difficult. Moving less causes further loss of strength and energy production. Everyday activities then become even harder. The 2026 study investigated whether long-term training could interrupt this process at the molecular level. Researchers collected muscle samples from younger adults and several groups of older adults. The older participants differed in physical function, from people with impaired mobility to individuals who had trained consistently. The team measured gene activity, fats, metabolites, mitochondrial function, physical performance, and responses to a controlled session of exercise. This allowed them to observe not only what the muscles looked like at rest, but also how they reacted when challenged. At baseline, older adults showed lower expression of genes involved in energy metabolism and cellular respiration than younger adults with comparable everyday activity. This was the expected signature of aging muscle. However, trained older adults showed a very different pattern. Approximately half of the molecular differences associated with age were absent in their muscles. Important genes connected with mitochondrial function and energy production remained more youthful. Their molecular profiles did not perfectly match those of young adults, but they were much closer than the profiles found in physically impaired older participants. This finding produced an important distinction between potentially preventable and apparently unavoidable aging. Some changes occurred in older muscle regardless of training status. These may reflect biological processes that exercise cannot fully prevent. Other changes were strongly associated with physical function and were greatly reduced in trained older adults. This suggests that the molecular appearance of aging contains at least two layers. The first is chronological. It reflects changes that accumulate simply because time has passed. The second is functional. It reflects how the body has been used. Exercise appears capable of reshaping the second layer. The study also examined how muscles responded immediately after exercise. All participants showed changes in genes connected with immune activity and cellular stress. But among older adults, the strength of the response was related to fitness. Fitter participants produced a stronger and more coordinated molecular reaction. That may initially sound undesirable. Why would a larger stress response be healthier? Exercise temporarily disturbs the body. Energy is consumed, muscle fibers experience mechanical stress, temperature rises, and signaling molecules are released. The body responds by activating repair, adaptation, and defense systems. This temporary stress is known as hormesis. A manageable challenge triggers the body to rebuild itself more strongly. The benefit does not come only from the movement itself. It comes from the recovery and adaptation that follow. An older muscle with a weak response may be less capable of detecting stress or activating the machinery needed to adapt. A trained muscle may retain a more responsive communication system, allowing it to react to exercise in a way that resembles younger tissue. The researchers also identified relationships involving NAD+, a molecule essential for metabolism, mitochondrial activity, DNA repair, and cellular signaling. NAD+ levels commonly decline with age, leading to intense interest in supplements such as nicotinamide riboside and NMN. But human trials of these supplements have produced mixed results, and raising NAD+ in the blood does not automatically mean that muscle function or lifespan will improve. The study offers a broader perspective. NAD+ did not appear to operate as an isolated anti-aging switch. It was embedded in a network involving mitochondrial respiration, lipid metabolism, physical fitness, and exercise responses. This suggests that healthy NAD+ biology may be partly a consequence of a well-functioning metabolic system rather than something that can always be restored by taking one molecule. Exercise affects the entire network simultaneously. During aerobic activity, muscles increase oxygen use, mitochondrial demand, blood flow, and fuel metabolism. During resistance training, mechanical tension activates pathways involved in protein synthesis and tissue remodeling. Regular training also improves insulin sensitivity and increases the body's capacity to handle future physical stress. No supplement currently reproduces all of these effects. This does not mean everyone must become an endurance athlete. The trained older adults in the study represent an example of what long-term fitness can preserve, but health benefits begin far below elite training levels. Walking faster, climbing stairs, cycling, swimming, resistance exercise, and reducing sedentary time can all contribute to maintaining function. The most effective program is not necessarily the hardest. It is the one that can be repeated for years. Aerobic exercise supports cardiovascular fitness and mitochondrial capacity. Resistance training helps preserve muscle mass, strength, and bone. Balance exercises reduce falls. Daily movement prevents long periods of inactivity from becoming the body's default state. For older adults or people with health limitations, the starting point may be extremely modest. Standing from a chair repeatedly, walking for 10 minutes, using resistance bands, or carrying light objects can provide a meaningful stimulus. Progress should be gradual because muscle, tendons, joints, and the cardiovascular system need time to adapt. The study also does not prove that exercise caused every molecular difference observed. The researchers compared groups rather than randomly assigning people to train for decades. People who remain athletic into old age may have favorable genetics, healthier diets, better access to medical care, or other characteristics that contributed to their results. Some may find exercise easier because they were already aging more slowly. This is a common challenge in research on lifelong habits. Still, the findings align with randomized trials showing that exercise improves strength, mobility, insulin sensitivity, cardiovascular health, and physical function in older adults. The new study adds a detailed molecular map showing how fitness may reshape the biology beneath those visible improvements. Another limitation is that molecular youthfulness does not automatically prove longer life. A gene expression pattern can look younger without guaranteeing that someone will avoid disease or live to 100. The most convincing outcomes remain practical. Can a person walk independently? Can they rise from the floor? Can they carry groceries? Can they recover after illness? Can they maintain enough strength to continue living without assistance? These abilities depend heavily on muscle. Aging research often focuses on futuristic treatments, gene therapy, cellular reprogramming, senolytic drugs, NAD plus boosters, and biological age clocks. Some may eventually become valuable. But muscle presents a rare case in which a powerful intervention is already available. It requires no experimental gene editing. It does not need to wait for regulatory approval. It is inexpensive, scalable, and supported by decades of evidence. The difficulty is that exercise cannot be stored for later. Strength built at 30 does not permanently protect someone at 70. Muscle adapts to current demand. When the demand disappears, much of the adaptation gradually disappears with it. Training therefore works less like a vaccine and more like regular maintenance. The body repeatedly asks the same question: do you still need this strength? If the answer is yes, because the muscles are frequently challenged, the body invests resources in preserving them. If the answer remains no for years, maintaining costly muscle tissue becomes a lower priority. This is why aging can accelerate after retirement, illness, injury, or long periods of inactivity. The calendar continues moving at the same speed, but the signals reaching the muscles change dramatically. The new research does not show that exercise makes an older person literally young again. It shows something more realistic and perhaps more useful. Aging does not write the same molecular program into every muscle. Some changes appear difficult to escape. Others are strongly influenced by physical fitness. Trained older muscles can preserve energy systems, cellular respiration, and stress responses that resemble those of much younger people. Your birth year cannot be changed. But the biological instructions operating inside your muscles are not determined by age alone. Every walk, climb, lift, ride, and training session sends a signal. Repeated over years, those signals may decide whether your muscles simply become old or learn how to remain capable while the rest of the calendar moves forward.